My name is Kylie Bonthrone. I am a human and equine sports therapist. I trained in England a number of years ago and have been working in Zim mostly ever since. When I was younger, I played a lot of sport. I grew up in a very sporting family, so it was always hockey, tennis, swimming. And growing up on a farm, I also spent a lot of time riding horses, which is where I sort of got my love for horses and went on to study equine science at uni initially, and it all kind of developed from there. When I got back from university, I quite quickly got involved with the Swanson Yard, working under Kirk Swanson, and that's kind of where the horse racing bug really kicked off. Since those early days, I've been really involved in their yard, really involved in horse racing in Zim, in a number of different areas. I initially started Equestrian Performance when I came back from university, so that was at the end of 2014. I have worked in a number of countries and mostly in high performance equestrian sports. So I worked in the US at a thoroughbred training facility. I've worked in England. I've worked in a couple of other African countries, mostly aimed at high performance. So sports horses that are actively involved in competition. Race horses are kind of my passion, just because you see those marginal gains so quickly in racing. It's a really tough sport, and I've really grown to love it. I initially came across the apprentices when I was running a fitness session for equestrian athletes. We ran it, my husband and I ran it at Borrowdale Racecourse, and one of the trainers, Bridget Stidolf, recommended that the apprentices join. It was a free weekly fitness session, and that's when they first came along. I think that was probably about 2017, so that was my first interaction with them. Our goal, or my goal for Equestrian Performance, is always to sort of get those marginal gains in equestrian sports. And I quickly realized that to do that, you had to sort of look at the horse and the rider. My husband studied strength and conditioning at uni, and fitness, because it has always been a real part of who we are. It was a sort of natural thing to add that to our repertoire of things that we offered. I then later on studied sports massage for people, so I now treat riders, horses, and then work on the fitness side as well. When we first started with the apprentices, it was very much, we just saw them every week, did a fitness session. That then became we did that session twice a week. And I guess through that, we quickly got to know them very well. I suppose from that, I then began to mentor them. Everything that we do is voluntary. The academy was dissolved this year, so they are currently in their third year of a 5-year apprenticeship. The academy is now dissolved, so they are kind of out on a limb, no support, not a lot on offer to them. Our first apprentice won all of them had a win. 3 of them had a win in 2019. The first one I do remember. I remember all their first wins very clearly. It's been a long, hard road. If you don't know what goes into horse racing, it's a lot. There's a lot of rules. There's very strict rules. It's difficult to get through an apprenticeship as a jockey, with weight restrictions, and the best academies in the world, they have so much to offer. They have so much funding. They have so much expertise, and because racing is so small in Zim, the academy took quite a hit, so there was a lot less support. These guys have had to really try and get by with not very much in the way of education with respect to their trade. So that has been really, really difficult. We've really battled. They were taken into the academy quite late, so they were a bit older than they should have been. And as a result, particularly one of the apprentices, Rogers, has really battled with his weight. So there is a lot of traditional means of losing weight. A lot of them are quite unhealthy. So, you know, they call it wasting, and it's like you're going sweating out, obviously, water, which means you're dehydrated to ride. A lot of running, you know, layered up, loads of tracksuits, that kind of thing. And now you're exerting yourself in the blazing sun to try and lose weight. And part of what we've done is try to really encourage them to do it the healthy way. So we've managed to get Fresh in a Box on board, and Rogers turns vegetarian basically the week that he's going to race. And we found that's quite a good way of trying to get on top of his weight. It hasn't been easy. There hasn't been a lot of funding. There hasn't been a lot of teaching. There hasn't been a lot of technical work. So it's been what I can only describe as a real uphill battle. And as a result, when one of them wins, it's I can't explain the feeling. It's absolutely incredible. It's a lot of the trainers fly in South African jockeys because those jockeys are riding races 5 days a week, so they're getting so much exposure. Our local jockeys here are only riding once every 2 weeks in races, and even then they're not riding a full card, so they get 2 or 3 rides. So when you're competing against someone who's riding 5 to 7 horses in races 5 days a week, it's just very hard to kind of transfer, you know, and kind of justify a lot of the time using a local jockey when they have so much less exposure. So when they have struggled for opportunity, now that they have some experience, obviously it's become easier. At the end of the day, these trainers have to produce winners, because if they don't produce winners, they lose owners. So they try and pair the best jockey with their horse that they can on that day. So for the apprentices to get experience initially was really, really, really tough. So when their wins started coming in, I mean, every time, I can't explain the feeling. It was just like winning the lotto, you know. It was years of pent-up frustration and hard work, finally feeling just like it's all paying off. If any of you have been to horse racing, you'll know that it's an exhilarating sport. It's so adrenaline fueled. So when you have a win that's that much more personal, it's just so incredible. To try and prepare them a little bit for race day, I used to give them a lot of information. I used to really try and motivate them and, you know, sort of run them through a lot of stuff. I'm not a jockey coach, so it was very difficult for me, but I'd try and inspire them and motivate them. I soon found, though, that, you know, there's a lot to think about as a jockey when you're riding races. First of all, it's fairly dangerous. You're traveling at high speed. There's multiple other horses and riders to consider. And I think that initially I was probably overwhelming them with information. So this year I took a new approach and just decided that I'd prepared them as much as I am humanly capable of preparing them with my limited experience in race tactics. So I just decided that on the day I wouldn't give them any information and that they would just, you know, ride for themselves. And I think it seems to have paid off. They've all come into their own this year. To combat the lack of opportunity, I really got them practicing a lot of visualization. If you know anything about visualization, they've proved that if you visualize your sport, your profession, exactly what you're doing multiple times a day even, they've proved that it does improve performance drastically. And that is what I've told them. I've said, there is no physical way that I can get you to ride 5 races a day that is going to make you competitive with those South African jockeys, but you can ride 5 races a day in your mind. And we practice it quite a bit. I've tried to, you know, it's a personal thing. It's about personal development. How much they take on board is how much they take on board. But everything down to steadying your heart rate. So you're visualizing it. So everything down to steadying your heart rate. You know, we had one of the apprentices who was struggling at the stalls, so struggling to get his horse to jump and travel. And I think it was a lot to do with nerves. So I just said to him, you know, you have to practice this. You know which rides that you're going to get on race day. You have to ride that one race, that one horse, 30 times over that distance. You know, horse racing is so complex. There's multiple different areas that can affect the performance of the horse on that day. You know, the trainer's saddling it at the back, then the horse is coming into the parade ring. The jockeys weighing in the jockey room, then they come out to the parade ring, then they chat to the owners, then they get on the horse, then they go to the start, you know. At the start they have to load into the pens, then they still have to jump. And this is what I've said to them. You have to visualize every single aspect that is within your control on race day. So we start in the jockey room and they visualize standing on the scale, you know, and then they visualize giving the saddle to the trainer, and then they visualize coming out to the parade ring, speaking with the owner, listening to the trainer. And I tell them, when you're in the parade ring, in your mind, when you are practicing this, you need to steady your heart rate. There's a couple of studies that have proved that horses' heart rates reflect human heart rates, particularly when you're riding them. So horses pick up on your nerves. So I've said to them, you know, you get in the parade ring, you steady your heart rate. You get on your horse, you steady your heart rate. You go up to the start, you know, you need to know every single thing that is going to happen in that race, and you need to have ridden it 30 times in your mind before race day. So I trust that they do that. We talk about it a lot. I try and get them to be as thorough as they can. When they're going to the start, they're listening to, you know, the crowd, they're listening to the loudspeaker, they're playing everything in their mind, how they think it's going to go on race day. When they get to the start, you know, when they get in the stalls, in the pens, I tell them, make sure that you take a deep breath in, physically breathe in and out, audibly, so that the horse relaxes, so that you relax, and practice that jump. The jump is so important in horse racing. Make sure that you're leaving the pens exactly how you want to leave them. You have an opportunity to ride this race 500 times before you actually ride it. We practice a lot of that, so I think that has helped them a lot. I know Rogers, we practiced a lot. He rode so many races where he got beaten on the line, or, you know, just silly things, interfered with the horse, got the race taken away from him. It was so incredibly frustrating being on the sidelines when Rogers was trying to break his maiden, you know, win his first race. It was just so frustrating. And we practice this visualization a lot, and I can honestly say that it's made them better riders with very, very little instruction and tuition. So before the race day now, I don't interfere. I let them get on with it. I wish them luck. Tell them to remember how many people have supported them along the way and to have a lot of fun. I also tell them now that it is not about riding winners. It's about riding well. If they don't ride well, they don't get more opportunities. I've told them the wins will come. So mostly to motivate them, I just tell them that, you know, no one is going to make their dreams come true for them. We don't live in a world where people pick up other people's dreams and aspirations and help them come true, whatever people like to believe. I don't believe we live in a world like that. So I've told them that they are single-handedly responsible for making their own dreams come true. They've got some big goals, some big dreams. There's a lot of people who have supported them along the way, but at the end of the day, they're one up, and it's them against horse racing. It's them against the world, and they really, if they wanna be all that they want to be, it's up to them to make it work and to get to where they want to go. As far as female jockeys go, I know this is a big point of interest. Tatenda, you mentioned that the University of Liverpool study has come forward and claimed that female jockeys are basically as good as men based on their study. I did go and have a look at the study. They analysed 1.25 million rides over 14 seasons, so I would say that's pretty good. as far as studies go, it's not like they looked at one season and, a couple of rides. 1.25 million rides is, I'd say, a fair study. They did say that female jockeys were on horses that had less chance of winning. And this is a problem that we face with the apprentices. Until you prove yourself, you are going to get horses that have less chance of winning because they're not going to put you on the best horse until you prove yourself. So I suppose it's probably the same for female jockeys, and the study claims that it is the same. They used an analysis to control the quality of rides in the study, and based on that, they then found that that female jockeys were no better or no worse than male jockeys. They did, however, find that women took up 9.5% of rides in the lowest grades, so I think that's something to consider, and that only 1 in 100 rides went to a female jockey. So the question that you asked me is, do I believe that female jockeys are as good as men? I try and base most of what I do off science. At the same time, I don't believe that people are hindered by lack of talent. I think people are hindered by lack of motivation and lack of self-belief. So physically, I don't believe that women are as strong as men. I don't believe that female jockeys are as strong as male jockeys. I don't believe that they have as much endurance as male jockeys. Sure, you'll probably get a female athlete every now and then who can really compete with the boys on strength and stamina and endurance. But I think that women offer horse racing something so different than men. Women have a lot more empathy towards horses, I think. I think women could, I'm speaking very generally, obviously, but I think women have something really different to offer, and I think they're probably less aggressive than men. I think they're probably smarter on the turf than men. So can women ride as many winners as men? Yes, I think they can. I think that given the opportunity, given the same opportunity, given the time, given those things, I think that women can ride as many winners as men can. I do think that there's a lot of things against women in racing. Women often end up getting married and then obviously having kids. That really hinders a career in horse racing. When you having kids, falling pregnant, that kind of thing, it makes it really difficult to take a couple of years out of your job and then expect to come back and pick up where you left off. It's a tough sport with respect to that. I also think that once you've had kids, potentially you have a little bit more self-preservation, so I think that would probably play into it a little bit as well. So I think I personally would go as far as to say women are disadvantaged in horse racing, but I believe that women can be any bit as effective as men, particularly female jockeys. Why does Zim have so few female apprentices? Zim has so few apprentices, and with the academy closing, there's going to be no apprentices. The racing community here is too small to sustain an academy that's churning out apprentices every year. I think racing is only just starting to evolve. I mean, you see women on the scene now and they're starting to really be competitive with men, but traditionally that wasn't the case. So I think those are sort of factors that play into why there are few female, well, there's one female apprentice who was in Zim and has transferred to South Africa. What should we do to encourage more female jockeys in Zim? As I said, I don't think that is going to change. Horse racing in Zimbabwe is too small. It's not really supported enough to warrant taking another intake of apprentices. I can only hope that Amira takes out her license in South Africa. She is our one female apprentice and now the single female apprentice in South Africa. So I can only hope she gets her license and can grace us with her presence back at Borrowdale Park, riding winners for us. But I'd also like to think that she'll end up living out her dream and riding in Australia. She's she's got the commitment, she's got the determination, and she is really, really keen. Given the opportunity, I think this girl can go places. So I think, what can we do to encourage female jockeys in Zim? I don't think there's much we can do, and I don't think that it's realistic to think that we are going to get more female jockeys in Zimbabwe. In the world, yes, but in Zimbabwe, I don't think so. Have I been able to persuade trainers to allow females like Amira to ride? I don't get involved with asking trainers for the apprentices to have rides, primarily because I work with them as their mentor voluntarily. I don't do it for a job, so I'm not their manager. I don't take a fee to manage them. I also work as an equine physio in horse racing, so it's very tricky for me. I don't want to affect business because I'm driving another agenda. I also think that these apprentices, as I've said before, it's one up in a dog-eat-dog world. I don't want them to get their licenses and then think that it's all going to be easy and that, you know, I'm going to be able to solve all their problems, because it's a really tough sport, and they know that. They have been exposed to its incredible toughness for the last 3 years. So I don't get involved with getting them rides. I allow them to get rides purely off their own merit. I don't interfere. I try and plead their case where I can, and I try and promote them where I can. But as far as going individually to trainers to get them rides, I don't do that at all. And I think it's probably been for the best. I think that now this COVID lockdown has just proved an absolute godsend for us. In spite of it being very difficult for the world and very difficult for the economy, it's given them a lot of experience that they wouldn't have otherwise got. And I, for one, can't help but be grateful for the enormous strides they've taken in this shutdown. And I just, it's been a long road. You guys can follow me. My page on Instagram and Facebook is Equestrian Performance. All of the apprentices have their own pages, which I think is probably easier if we put up a page after this, or if you go on my Facebook page, I post about them all the time, so you'll be able to see their pages. But all I can really say is it's not an easy road being an apprentice jockey in Zimbabwe. It's not an easy road being a Zimbabwean jockey in Zimbabwe. It's not an easy road. It's not a job that's paying you what you should be paid. It's a tough sport. It's tougher in this country because they're not racing all the time. All I can ask is that you follow their journey, that you give them some support, that you watch these incredible kids as they try and take on the world, because that's where they're going. I have told them that the sky is the limit and that I am not putting a ceiling on them. If they're putting a ceiling on themselves, that's their indaba, but I am not putting a ceiling on them. Rogers would like to ride against Frankie Dettori. He's arguably the most famous jockey in the world. He wants to ride heads up, heads down with him. And I don't see why that shouldn't happen. In my world, that should happen. They are limited only by opportunity. And I just hope that this interview sheds some light on that, and I hope that you follow their journey. And I hope that one day we see a local, born and bred Zimbabwean jockey competing somewhere in the world that's where horse racing is held in high prestige, and they're competing against the greats, the best of the best, because I've said before, I think the only thing that separates them from their idols is opportunity. They are hardworking, they're dedicated, and I'm excited to see where they go.